Welcome in everyone to Hogvillenet YouTube Live post game. Boy, we're getting close to the end of the regular season. 3 games to go. This was for the Arkansas Razorbacks hosting Georgia tonight at Bud Walton Arena. This was probably a must not lose. I mean, Arkansas, if it had lost this game, was probably still somewhere on the bubble, but with a treacherous stretch left, and who knows how that plays out and how other teams on the bubble or close to it are also executing or finishing games at the end of the season. You don't want to be in that position. Arkansas left no doubt early in this game. I think they were up 8-6, 15-2, put it away. Arkansas went up 15. That ballooned up more and more as Arkansas, had 30 plus advantages in this game, led by as many as 34 points. But the Arkansas Razorbacks, their second highest scoring point total in a game this season, 97-65, a 32-point win over the Georgia Bulldogs at Bud Walton Arena. Arkansas is now 19-9 overall. They moved back above 500 in the SEC standings at 8-7, and so the Razorbacks now have won 2 games in a row after dropping 2 in a row. And then when you looked at the fact that the team had won 5 consecutive league games before going 2-2 in these last 4. At least, I mean, the Razorbacks, if you want to look at it this way, have won 7 of their last 9 SEC games after starting 1-5. And so Arkansas has got itself technically in a position to still fight it out for a 3 or 4 seed in the SEC tournament. Even though that doesn't seem very likely, Arkansas's probably got to win out and they need help. One team that lost tonight that was 2 games ahead of Arkansas in the loss column was Tennessee, losing at Texas A&M. So now Arkansas is within a game of the Vols, still 2 games back, or a game and a half back at Kentucky. The Wildcats play tomorrow night, and then Auburn and Vanderbilt play tomorrow night. Both of those teams have beaten Arkansas. Both are 1 game in the league standings ahead of the Hogs. So that's kind of the pecking order just ahead of Arkansas. Missouri's also 8-7 in league play, still fighting for one of those top 4 seeds, and they also, with Arkansas, have split. So then you would look at other tiebreakers. But typical, there's a log jam, somewhere in the middle or just better than the middle. And the pecking order, when you start looking at a top 4 seed in the SEC tournament, look, the top 4 seeds have a lot easier path. Double buys to the quarterfinals, the Friday night quarterfinals. Arkansas looks to be in good shape right now in terms of NCAA resume. This would have been a quad 3 loss. I started talking about how you really couldn't afford to lose this game. And I think now Arkansas, I'm not going to say that they're safely in, but they'd be in trouble even if they were still technically projected in after a loss tonight. They've only got 1 quad 3 loss in the regular season. That's against LSU. They cannot pick up another. Only 3 games left. 2 of them are quad 1 win opportunities on the road. It starts at Alabama, second-ranked league leader, still unbeaten in league play. And that game, not unbeaten in league play, but that game will be after losing at Tennessee. But that game will be played on Saturday. And then Arkansas's got a midweek game on the road against Tennessee. Lost tonight, the Vols did. They've been struggling of late, but still tough to win in Knoxville. And then Arkansas closes out the regular season March 4th on a Saturday against a Kentucky team that's surging. So when we look at this, you've got a lot of teams outside of Alabama and Texas A&M at the top battling for that 3 and 4 seed. You got a lot of teams. I think A&M was a projected 7 seed, but there's in Kentucky an 8, but Kentucky at 8, A&M at 7, Arkansas is a 9, Missouri, Mississippi State was projected in before losing at Missouri in an overtime game. But so there's a lot of teams kind of muddled up, and they're still close enough to the bubble where we don't know. But right now the SEC is projected with 8 teams in. Arkansas is probably in that top 4 group when you look at it from that standpoint, top 4 or 5 teams out of the 8 projected in. That's the way I see it. Arkansas's net came in at 19. This isn't the kind of game you win that moves your net much. It really depends on what other teams are doing. I think A&M beating Tennessee helps A&M, which helps Arkansas's resume because just recently that home win back on January 31st against the Aggies becomes a quad 1 win on Arkansas's resume. They're now 3-6 in quad 1, 4-2 in quad 2. And then they picked up a quad 3 win tonight. So that doesn't move the resume on its own merit. It's going to Arkansas making any movement is really going to be based on some of the other teams they play on their schedule and how they performed, kind of helping boost things. But a loss would have been, like I said, but it really been tough, and Arkansas would have slid back firmly, I believe, back into the bubble. They're so close to it that these next few tough games puts more pressure on the Hogs. Now, let's talk about this game. It was a blowout. I haven't said much. I'm going to pat myself on the back. I don't do a lot of, there's a lot of clickbait fluff pieces put out every week out there. And I don't do a lot of, I just don't do that. I don't do a lot of feature writing, but I did want to highlight Nick Smith Jr. simply because I could see this coming. I could see how much his impact and what he brings to the floor was changing the dynamics for Arkansas, even though he hadn't really strung together a big night. Not since his first run after missing the first 6 games when he had back-to-back 20-point-plus games against Greensboro and Oklahoma. And so I really thought that this guy was about to not only break out, but I wanted to break down all the things that he brings to the table that are so nuanced relative to what the Hogs already had. The Arkansas, not everybody is the same, but everybody had some of the same issues. Players that aren't comfortable shooting from 3. Not a whole lot of shot creation, even inside the arc. Mostly got to get downhill, got to hope you get to the basket, and then make free throws if you get fouled. Even though Arkansas had some good shooting performances without Nick Smith Jr., things didn't come easy. And I thought him coming back would make a big difference. And man, did this guy, one of the lines I wrote in my article was, Smith is a 30-point on any given night, keg of dynamite. And really, that's where he was headed tonight. 26 points. He went off. He exploded. 9 of 14 from the field. 5 of 8 from 3, 3 or 4 at the free throw line, chipped in a couple of assists and in a rebound. I think played 29 minutes. Obviously, anybody that played significant minutes tonight had a big box score plus. This was a blowout. But all the things I wrote about that he does, his change of pace, bringing pushing in transition, something we haven't seen with Arkansas. His movement on and off the ball in the half court just puts defenders on skates. They have to account for him. They have to chase him. And it opens up lanes for others. And when the ball's moving, and you saw it tonight with Arkansas, 64% from the field, the Hogs even improved on the hot shooting against Florida. 11 of 20 from 3, over 55%. I mean, is this Arkansas Razorback basketball? Not like we've seen. But other guys chipped in. It wasn't just Nick Smith Jr. But I look at all the ways that he creates flow, spacing, and movement on offense, and just his energy at both ends. You could point to both ends. He is a high energy guy. I wrote about that as well, but I talked about all the things that he brings to the table that makes everybody else better. A guy like Anthony Black, who can make guys better with a pass, was showing out tonight. I mean, he matched his career high 8 assists with a lot of time left in that game. Now, he finished with 8 assists to go with 10 points and I think 4 rebounds, but he matched his career high in dimes. Arkansas had 26 assists tonight. I need to look that up. I've already written a game, 2/3 of a game story, going to finish it up after we do this. But I need to look up and see if that's a season high for this team for assists. I know they've had, I think, 2 or 3 other good assist games over 20. I don't remember what the season high is. It might have been tonight. But Arkansas dominated this game across the board. Really just a couple of aspects of the game where they didn't dominate, but were close. But they dominated just about everything. Defensively, they were sound again. Holding the Georgia team down in the 36% shooting. The Bulldogs did hit 6 of 18 from 3 for 33.3%. But really, statistics were academic in the second half at the point where Arkansas, the game was already put away. Arkansas continued to roll. There was a little slow stretch where Arkansas was a little sloppy, missed some free throws. Georgia had a 7-1 run. And that was the only good news for the Bulldogs, as they got within 23. I mean, that was their snowball run, and that's where it got them. So this was a game that obviously Arkansas took care of business. I was really impressed. I talked about Nick Smith Jr., how he impacts the game, how he impacts the flow, the movement. He's the only Razorback with skill and quick twitch. Using that skill to break players down. You see him go left and right with an array of runners. Him running to the corners and getting open looks from 3. And you saw Ricky Council not taking deep shot clock threes, which has been when he does it. He was more comfortable tonight because the way the ball was moving, he got some open looks. This is the kind of game where you don't mind Arkansas going 11 of 20 and shooting that many. Well, they were making them, but also you were winning. There just wasn't much of a pushback from Georgia. And you're coming off a win by 19 points against an underhanded Florida team. Now look, pump the brakes. The Bulldogs have lost a lot. They were 1-6 on the road in SEC play coming in, all right? They won at Ole Miss back in January. Most of those losses were blowouts. I mean, big blowouts, 20 plus, 30 plus. So this was in line with that. Still, this was a team that had won 6 league games. They'd won 2 of their previous 3 games, even though they just went on the road and got throttled at Alabama. But the Bulldogs, this could have been a game where Arkansas turned the ball over. That's something that blew my mind. Arkansas had only 2 first half turnovers, 13-5 plus 8 there. They were plus 14 in points off turnovers, 20-6. They were plus 16 again, points in the paint, 40-24. They were plus 21 in bench scoring, 41-20. And when you looked at all of that dominance, it helps paint the picture of how the team left you shooting from 3 like it did, the overall shooting, and then all those battles that it won. This was a runaway train tonight. And I really think I want to give Nick Smith Jr. a lot of credit for playing with confidence. Look, he took a lot of shots out there and kept his head down and worked to get himself back to 100%. And then he didn't always get to play right away. And I can understand that a little bit. I always wondered why he didn't play more and play in that second half against A&M. But we moved past that. You saw him get his 32 minutes against Florida. You saw his impact, even though he only had 10 points on 4 of 12 shooting. And then tonight, it was on display. So that's not to say this is what you're going to see every game. It gets much tougher now, especially going back on the road. Free throw percentage was not good. I didn't talk about that. 12 of 22. That was a problem tonight. I said across the board dominance. That was one area where Arkansas really struggled, just over 54%. The Hogs were also -1 in second chance points, 8-7. -5 in fast break points, 15-10. That sounds weird, doesn't it? Because Arkansas scored 97 points. It seemed like they were getting out in transition. But it was so funny because against Florida, Arkansas made 30-plus field goals, I think 34, and only had 8 assists. That was a one-on-one game. That was a throw the ball to Jalen Graham and let him go to work. That was let Nick Smith, Ricky Council, AB, whoever, take their guy off the dribble. This game, the ball was a hot potato in a good way, moving inside and out, guys moving, getting to spots. This is one of the best games I've seen, not only Arkansas cutting, but getting to spots where there would be open shots off a good movement. And Nick Smith, you bet, has a lot to do with that. And he was taking and knocking those down. You saw that last 3 he hit in transition. That's like seeing an alien from outer space on this team. I can't remember a time Arkansas hit a 3 in transition when it wasn't Nick Smith Jr. And we saw that. Those are the kind of plays that have hit Arkansas this year, but Arkansas's not been able to produce. But this was a game we talked about. 8 assists, 34 made field goals against Florida. This was a ball movement night. This was a guys attacking off that ball movement. I'm going to go down the list. I mean, Ricky Council, the 4 back-to-back games playing off the bench. We know he had a 6-man role at Wichita State before transferring. And all of a sudden, he looks pretty comfortable coming off the bench because he's playing a starter's role, even though he's not technically starting right now. You saw Jalen Graham now back-to-back games where he's getting real run. He was in the top 7-minute rotation for back-to-back games. We've seen him in the past give Arkansas a spark, and especially on offense. We didn't necessarily see him come in back-to-back games. 6 of his 8 points were in the first half. I thought he had some problem areas in this game, but he also gave Arkansas some production. Again, I mentioned the 8 points, 5 rebounds, a couple of assists. He's a guy that can finish above the rim and his craft in the paint and around the basket, not just off spin moves, little push shots. He had a half hook. Really gave Arkansas some good stuff tonight. Mekhi Mitchell, 7 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. Mekhi's a guy that to me is efficient and does his job. And Mikal has really helped Arkansas of late. Not as much run tonight, but he did get on the court a little bit. Not as many minutes for him. But you really see, to me, with Ricky Council now shifting to the bench, we'll see if Musselman continues to do this. Everything's looked really good against these last 2 opponents. Florida was handicapped with Castleton out for the first time. This is a team that may struggle the rest of the way. This is a Georgia team that gets clobbered on the road. We need to see how things progress and look doing it this way. I'm assuming Musselman's going to go at it with the same thought process against Bama, although don't ever count him out for doing something a little different. So I think there's definitely a top 6 idea, a top 6 rotation right now, with 2 more guys, 7 and 8, being a little bit flexible based on what's working. And I would put I would put McKell and Graham in that category. And I think the top six then are Council coming off as the sixth man, and then we know the starters: Mackay, Jordan Walsh, Devo Davis, Nick Smith Jr. and Anthony Black. So that's what it's looked like these last two games. I won't be surprised if that's the way it rolls out and doles out at Alabama. A lot of heat and a lot of press on Alabama having nothing to do with basketball right now. And so you just wonder how that plays out and how that impacts the coach who's taking criticism for his comments. Everybody knows the tragedy. One of the former Alabama players kicked off the team, charged with murder with an accomplice. Brandon Miller, well, let's just call him a lock for SEC Player of the Year, maybe the National Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year, Newcomer of the Year, all of it somehow involved in that. I don't want to jump off too much in that, but that is Arkansas's next game. And so we wonder, will the Crimson Tide be distracted? And we also wonder, would it matter? Because I think this Arkansas team right now has the makings to go anywhere and win. I know that sounds a little crazy. They just beat a couple of teams that are not in the same stratosphere as Alabama, but Arkansas has been tough on the road in terms of not wins and losses. But when you go back to all the last five road performances, Missouri, Baylor, South Carolina, Kentucky, and A&M, Arkansas was either right there at the very end with a chance to win or they won. And it wasn't always like that. So this is a team, even though we can't call it a good road team, it's a team that is more comfortable putting itself in a position to win in the end. And now you've got Nick Smith Jr. back, and let's see if he's able to continue to click on all cylinders. I thought the last couple of games, when he puts the ball in the deck, this is so nuanced. It's almost impossible for him not to create an open shot for himself. And then if the defense brings help or somehow clamps down, he finds an open guy. He's not forcing awful shots. He's getting good looks. You see the little baseline runners, the pull-up jumpers. The three-point shot was cooking tonight. But this is a guy, you see why his pro game, because look, those lanes in the NBA, it sounds crazy. It's harder to score at this level for guys that can create because the driving lanes are tighter and the way that the rules are and the way players can play. In the NBA, the lanes are much wider. So guys are more athletic, longer, more savvy, can close quicker, but there's a lot wider lanes. That's why I think a guy like Anthony Black will actually thrive even more at times than he is now, the way the pro game is. I think the same thing for Nick Smith Jr., but you saw Nick tonight just authoring his own chapters. Again, 26 points, career high. He had 20 plus both against Greensboro and Oklahoma earlier in the year. He's only played 9 games. So a third of those, very obviously has not gotten any kind of rhythm at any point really, and is this deep in the season. But 3 of his 9 appearances, he's 20 plus. He's got 5 double-digit scoring games now. Tonight will help his efficiency. I think when you look at his efficiency, it doesn't define to this point who he really is. And I don't know that tonight's hot shooting defines it either. It's somewhere closer to that though than where he was numbers wise coming in when you put it all together. And I think again when I look at everybody feeding off of what Nick Smith Jr. brings to that table, it's quite impressive. We talk about the resume. Lenardi had bumped Arkansas up to a 9 seed off the 10 line, so they're still fairly close coming in to being right there on the bubble. Again, tonight doesn't move that needle much other than what was going on around the Razorbacks with other teams that were maybe with a similar resume tonight in the next few days as games play out in the midweek games, and we see how not only not suffering a bad loss helped, but then what was going on with others to help Arkansas. The Razorbacks are 1 win away from their 4th consecutive 20-win season. If I mentioned that before, I forgot about it. So I'm bringing that up again. That's all under Eric Musselman. And so that's impressive. Arkansas obviously went 20-12 in that first year, won their first game, that Wednesday game being one of the bottom 4 seeds against Vanderbilt. The season ended because of COVID, but that win, it gave Arkansas 20 wins, 20-12. And then since then, we know what they've done. They've gone on huge rolls late in the season, February, March, back-to-back Elite Eights, back-to-back national top 10 final rankings. This team's out of the polls right now. I think they did pick up a point in the AP poll that came out on Monday. Arkansas, if Arkansas goes and wins on the road at Alabama, I think that's enough to me when you get to 4 quad 1 wins and then you've picked up your third road win. That would be your sixth win away from home when you look at the neutral sites with with 3 of your quad 1 wins being on the road or away from home. I think the resume has to really jump. That's an if on that win before you ever play Tennessee or Kentucky. I think that's would be a big statement to shift things for Arkansas to be in that conversation at that point for a 7 seed. Just at that point, with more work to do, but I think it jumps you a couple of seed lines in combination with some other things. Now, I could be wrong about that, but Arkansas would prefer to get on the other somewhere on one side or the other of an 8 or 9 seed, so they don't have that. If you win the first round, you play a 1 seed in the second. I mean, you take what you can get, but you'd love to be a 7 or a 6, which may be the best case scenarios within reason, or maybe a 10. But Arkansas. If Arkansas were to win out, let's say they won these next 3 games, just throwing it out here. I'm not predicting it, not saying it's what I think, but if they won these next 3 games and then went on a serious run in the SEC tournament, maybe even winning the tournament, I could see a 5 seed there. I could potentially see a 4, depending upon what happens with other teams. Well, I think someone just said now we are a top 6 seed. I mean, I don't know. I didn't read the rest of it, so I don't know if you think that or you're hassling me for even suggesting it. I'm just talking about the what ifs. This is where we're at. You're 3 games left in the regular season. 2 of them are for sure quad 1 results, either way. Now we are not a top 6 seed with a net of 19. BPI and KenPom 15. Think we move up soon. Well, part of Arkansas's problem on the resume is the 1 quad 3 loss. It hasn't been great on the road. The strength of schedule is getting better, and it's going to really move up. So you could be right. Brandon Miller's something wild. I missed that. And I don't want to speculate too much about his involvement. I don't know all the details other than what's been talked about in the police report. Him delivering a gun that belonged to one of the 2 young men that were charged, and that his car was somehow parked in a way that entrapped. I don't even know if that's true, but I read that. Entrap the victim. So we don't even know the details on that. Was there intent there? Was it just coincidence and by accident? That could be the truth. Again, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I just did. I'm going to back out of it. But the Razorbacks tonight, these are the kind of games you want to see. I always talk about when Arkansas got on big rolls the previous 2 years in February. Most of those rolls were relative to winning games, but Arkansas wasn't blowing a lot of people out. More close games and battles, but Arkansas just being the better team late. We really haven't seen Arkansas finish games like that. You could go back to the A&M game I guessed on January 31st. I think Arkansas was up by 4 fairly late, and they outscored the Aggies last 4 or 5 minutes by 7 to win by 11. But Arkansas hasn't been faring as well with games that finish in the last 1 or 2 possessions of a 1 or 2 possession game. And so, or the last minute and a half or 2 minutes. And so those are the kind of battles you might expect to have against Alabama if you're in it at that point, and then Tennessee. And so Arkansas's got to make that climb. They did it against South Carolina, a team they had blown out, let them come back and take a lead. It went back and forth a little bit, and Arkansas made plays at the end. But that's not that was a team that was, that was almost a duel of who could be more inept at the end. And that South Carolina won the inept battle. Musselman coach team at Arkansas, to be clear. Musselman coach team at Arkansas. Yeah, this is a Musselman coach team at Arkansas. And it has been this is the 4th season. And so every one of his teams have won 20 plus, except this one's at 19-9. And so there's 3 more regular season games left. The Kentucky game, by the way, in the season finale, if the Wildcats can move in, I think they were 33 in net. They need to be in the top 30 for the home win, if Arkansas were to win it, to count as a quad 1, because the road win at Kentucky a few weeks ago by 15 points was easily a quad 1 win because it was on the road. They've just got to be in the top 75. So Arkansas would love to have sweep Kentucky, and both of those would be worth quad 1 victories. Wouldn't that be great for the resume? But I think Arkansas, if you could pick who you want to beat. If you could only win one more of these games, it's the next one at Alabama. We shouldn't be talking like that because Arkansas playing, I think, with what they have in their arsenal now, and because they're not so predictable and is easy to scheme for, you know, I think now they've got a real chance to make some teams play on their heels and be a little uneasy, at least for stretches of games. And so I think that's advantage Arkansas, no matter who they're playing. And I think they're not going to surprise Alabama. Nate Oates and that group, they know what's coming in, and they know what Nick Smith can do. People know who he is. Uh, Musselman passes Muss most passes by a Musselman coach team in a single game, according to Muss. All right, so he likes 200 or more passes in a game. I haven't seen the post game press conference. I just saw the ball moving and jumping, and I saw those 26 assists, and I saw Arkansas getting it inside and out today. So that doesn't surprise me. He's uh, only 5 turnovers, right? So when the ball's moving like that, you might expect a few more turnovers because it's just like in football where if the ball's in the air, the idea is there might be some extra interceptions. So that's a valid point. Arkansas was just on point tonight, everywhere at all times. And I mean, they had that little quick, 7-1 run by Georgia. I think Arkansas missed 3 or 4 free throws and just a couple of 2 or 3 possessions there. Otherwise, they were superb and supreme in this game. Uh, it was amazing performances all around. And I look at Pinion coming in and knocking down 2 threes. Blake Lawson getting his first bucket as a Razorback to walk on. Darian Ford getting to play a little bit. We saw Kamani. I noticed Kamani in a boot. I hope. I'm sure Musselman will be asked about that in the post game press conference. I'll be interested to see what his comments are on that. Kamani's not factored in lately, but he's a guy that you want healthy because believe me, there may be moments again where Musselman needs him to go in and play tough guy. He had to do that against San Diego State. Every matchup's different. I love it when Musselman says that because he's constantly trying to remind everybody just because someone had a good game tonight or got 28 minutes tonight doesn't mean it's going to play out that way every time. I do think when I went through the rotations talk a little earlier, I do think that's how it's going to be planned for Alabama. But I could also see, depending upon how Musselman wants to attack that, um, for Arkansas to maybe play longer stretches bigger. Tonight, I thought when Arkansas went small with Jalen Graham on the floor, the pace was about as brisk as I've seen it. Guys were flying around and getting. I mean, it was just, because Graham's a pretty slick 6'9". I mean, he's quick, he's sleek, he covers a lot of ground quickly with his strides, and when he's determined to get downhill and get toward the basket, then you had 4 guards around him, or Jordan Walsh out there who's a 3-4, so he's kind of a combo there. But Arkansas can play that way too, and I think especially with Nick because of his 3-level ability. We haven't seen. I always talk about Nick as a 5-level scorer because not all of his mid-range shots are the same. Some of them are deep pull-up jumpers, not quite threes, but deep. And then he's got a lot of runners and floaters and other things at all crazy angles. To me, there's almost like 2 different levels before you even get all the way to the rim, which he can do that as well. And then he's a clutch shot maker. We haven't seen that yet because he hasn't been in a position like that. That may be coming, and I can't wait to see it because I think he's going to be one of those guys that might just be a closer at the end. Musselman likes in those tight games to put it in one guy's hands and let him create. And I always prefer a guy who can score or pass and make a good decision, but has the stones to step up and go get it himself. And that's always been Nick Smith Jr. at every level. Granted, we're 3 games left, and it's getting big time now with what these opponents are. And he doesn't know the feeling at this level of doing those kind of things yet. So you just wonder. But I would ride with him with the ball late in any situation because I've seen it so many times. And so that's me. We'll see what Eric Musselman does if and when they get back to that. I got a feeling one of these 2 games, maybe both, will come down to the wire. Very, very possible they could. And we'll see how Nick Smith Jr. responds. But big minutes for him. He's averaged over 30 minutes per game these last 2. I really liked Anthony Black's the way that he took command running this offense tonight. All the passes that have been talked about, all the assists. He's at the head. He's at the lead there, man. That's his show. Nick Smith Jr. did some good things on the ball. I think Ricky Council's playing a little bit more relaxed, and forcing less, but it may just only seem that way because the driving lanes are now cleaner, and the passes help with that as well. And so I think things are have made it been a little bit smoother for him to get into his. Obviously, he's a spectacular dunker. It's a shame Trevor Brazil isn't along for this ride right now, because I promise you, had Arkansas not had injuries, this is a team that mirrors Alabama in terms of record, or maybe better. 2 or 3 losses tops at this juncture. Brazil and Council having dunk offs every night to see who's jamming up that Sports Center top 10. But Ricky's fun to watch. You saw lob passes. You saw him in transition. You saw him knocking down threes. You see him making those double clutch, tough drives and finishes. You see AB showing a little bit more in the mid-range. We've seen in the last few games the Mekhi Mitchell shooting a little bit more in the mid-range. I asked Musselman this in the post-game press conference after Florida win, and he talked about the fact that we got to take open shots because it helps the flow of our offense. And if it's a mid-range, it's still a good shot. It's always a good shot if guys can knock them down. And so, Nick Smith Jr. proved tonight with his array of stuff that you love those non-threes, non-finishes at the rim with a guy like him, because when he's doing that, defenses can't just sit down on everything saying, well, they're either going to shoot a three, which we want them to do because they can't hit them, or they're going to try to get all the way in while we play a zone or pack it in and just wait on them. And then good luck to you. But the refs are going to have to call everything. You're going to have some turnovers because we know what you're trying to do. Nick changes so much because of all he can do on both sides of the floor, baseline to baseline. If he gets a rebound or a steal on one baseline, he's going to push. And now it's pick and choose time. He made some good passes tonight. Again, his assist numbers don't look good because guys are still trying to figure out his timing. He's moving so fast. When the ball's on him, they're not quite ready for it. And he's been off a little bit too on some of these lobs and things, but these are things that are going to sync up. But you really like seeing Nick Smith Jr. tonight and all the creativity. And again, I haven't talked enough about Jordan Walsh. 9 points, 7 rebounds. Sometimes his contributions get lost a little bit just because he's not Arkansas like a go-to scorer guy. But he's been a guy that's had some good offensive games and helped Arkansas win games. Been good defensively. I thought he struggled a little bit against Florida the other night. I thought he was better tonight. And then he's got a guy that you want to be more consistent with those big rebounding games. 7 rebounds tonight. Not that Arkansas needed him to win, but you want all hands on deck and guys playing good basketball moving forward, because again, this thing gets tough. Devo Davis didn't put up numbers in the last game. He scored Arkansas's first basket tonight. This was also, you're starting to see in these last couple of games, Arkansas relying less on him as a scorer and a shooter, but he's still doing other things out there that are positive. And I think the best version of Arkansas might be Devo being more of an opportunistic scorer as opposed to someone who's hunting his offense, if that makes sense. And he carried Arkansas with good 3-point shooting. When Arkansas started winning games again in league play, he was as valuable as anybody, maybe the most valuable when you look at both ends, two-way player. This guy, when you look back at the last 2 years, Elite Eights, they don't exist without Devo Davis. You're not talking about him. And you're not talking about this team being in position now without him. But I do like to see him play, being a contributor without feeling like he's got to go out there and create a lot of scoring. And I like to see that blend. That was really a lot how he played as a rookie, and he got a lot of opportunities, opportunistic scoring off the ball, a lot more off the ball. And I think that there's value to that. I don't think he has to be on the ball and like I said, creating shots for himself. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I think he's a guy that's going to score in double figures more for Arkansas and help them in that way too. But I find right now the dynamic with Nick and Ricky have really been tonight. You had 220-plus scores for Arkansas, and you didn't need a whole lot more than that as far as firepower because Arkansas had it cooking defensively as well. This was a Georgia team that has struggled on the road. I talked about that. It didn't get better tonight for the Bulldogs, but Arkansas doesn't need to worry about that. They needed the win, and then you wanted to win that way now that you're getting ready to go and play some really tough games away from home. And then Kentucky won't be easy in the last game. I talked about the stats. I think I went through Georgia's stats as well. I didn't say this. The Bulldogs are 21 to 27 at the free throw line. So 77.8%. This is a team that actually was a strong offensive rebounding team coming in, over 11 per game. They get to the free throw line, one of the best in the country at doing that. So they did that tonight. So you got to give them, I guess a tip of the hat. This is a team now that's 16 and 13 overall, 6 and 9 in league play. Like I said, they've been horrible on the road, worse than Arkansas was. But at home they did have wins over. They beat Kentucky, they beat Auburn, they beat Mississippi State. So and they play a lot of players, 9 or 10 guys deep. They were outmanned, outclassed tonight as the Arkansas Razorbacks put that hammer down, 97 to 65, 32-point win. We've gone through just about everything. First time in the SEC era that Arkansas had 25 plus assists and 5 or fewer turnovers in a game. And that's coming from Hog Stats. He does a great job of getting that stuff out there. That's why I was shocked. I said I was shocked when I looked at the turnovers to begin with for this team, only 5. And then the 26 assists, I really didn't go down that road and think, is that the greatest combination of those two things? And Musselman talked about how many passes they've had. They always like that 200 or more. I'm not sure what their high was in the past. I wonder if it approached 250. I don't know if they did or not, but I don't know if anybody else knows who's watching. But the Razorbacks, the ball was a hot potato in a good way. And what happens when the ball's moving is, and players are cutting and getting to spots, and it's not ball moving out of panic or because there's nowhere else to go with it, and you're just passing it because nobody wants to do anything. When it's by design and when it's in concert and everybody's connected, it can be hell on a defense. I don't care how good the defense is, because the ball moves faster. And if it's moving well, then the defense is going to get out of position. And now you want your offensive weapons to attack that. And Arkansas has not had a credible, competent three-point shooter who is a three-point, who can really bring that to the floor every night, and the defense is scared of it. They haven't had just an array of nuance and shot creation from the backcourt. That just is not, it's been mostly, let's see who can get downhill and get to the basket. And that's fine at times. It's helped Arkansas be good in finishing in the paint and getting to the free throw line some. But now there's more nuance in there. One guy's not going to carry Arkansas to the Final Four, but one guy can change the dynamics of very talented players around him that just needed a little bit extra to not be one-dimensional or only two-level scoring with no threat from three. And now that changes everything. And I think we'll see other players maybe have a little bit more confidence shooting from three with the ball moving like it is, because when you're in rhythm and flow and you're not taking them just to beat a shot clock, you don't feel pressured because you can't seem to crack and solve a zone defense, and you're taking them. When the defense is off balance, sometimes a shot that's not really in your wheelhouse feels a little better than when the defense is locked in on you. That should be obvious. And so, that can help everybody. Tonight, Arkansas is 11 of 20 from three. It was outstanding. But it's Hogvillenet YouTube Live. I'm glad you joined me. About 38 minutes in, Arkansas won tonight. Back-to-back wins after back-to-back losses after 5 straight league wins. Little bit of a roller coaster. Now Arkansas goes back on the road. This is really the most treacherous 2-game road stretch Arkansas's had. At this point, if Arkansas can split those and beat Kentucky at home, you're talking about going to the SEC tournament, maybe on the 7 seed line ish, with a chance to maybe improve a little bit on that or at least maintain it. If Arkansas goes 1-2 and beats Kentucky at home, it's always going to be relative to what other teams do. And then you hope your first round game in the SEC tournament isn't against a quad 3 or 4 opponent who beats you then. And now your resume might be shaky depending upon what others are doing. But I think if Arkansas even goes 1-2, loses the 2 road games, and even if it beats Kentucky, we'll see if that turns out to be a quad 1 or 2 if they did win it. But I think Arkansas is probably still okay, probably getting in. And then, obviously you want to go 3-0. I don't know. If Arkansas goes 0-3 at this point to finish out, I still think the resume is strong enough heading into the SEC tournament to be no worse than on the fringes of the bubble if they're not on it. And then again, you want to make sure you don't have a bad loss in that SEC tournament. So there's a few different ways this could play out and directions it could go. I think at this point, what I've seen of this Arkansas team, I've just got a feeling they're gonna at least get two of these last three. I'll come back and admit I'm wrong on that if they don't, but that's where I think it's headed. I think they're going to get two of the three. I wouldn't be shocked if they won all three, but I think they can go get two of these three. It's a crazy statement to make, I know, with their road resume and really their struggles there. But I think now they're a little bit more complete and they're a little bit tougher to deal with. And coming down the end of games, I think they're going to be a little tougher to deal with, right, than they have been. And we'll see how Nick Smith Jr. responds once they get to those situations because he hasn't been in them. You know, the Oklahoma game was fairly competitive. Arkansas was 10-9, but they had 3-4 possession leads late in that game. And then Nick, the game was pretty much over when he came out there at the end with about 4 minutes to go. So that, he really hasn't been in a situation yet where it's all on the line, where he's in the flow and part of the rotation. I guess you could say the second half against Mississippi State, but that was his first game back, and really even though he played 13 minutes in that second half, he was a big part of Arkansas cutting that 16-point deficit down to 3 with over a minute left. But it's just different right now. He's in a flow. He's back. He's got 4 games under his belt, and I think he's suited now to be thrust into those kind of situations when Arkansas faces him. And I think whether it's him or somebody else getting it done, I think his presence helps everybody. And I think it helps Arkansas be better in the last few possessions. And certainly if you foul him, percentage-wise, he's an 80+% free throw shooter. So, he's a guy you want at that free throw line too to finish games. So we'll see. But I think Arkansas's got the juice to win 2 of these 3. I'd probably favor that 2-1 down the stretch over any other scenario right now. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what plays out. Man, those come up and they go away so fast I can't lock in and read them. But thank you for joining me at Hogvillenet YouTube Live. Please go to hogville.net and check out the written content. Dudley Dawson's already got the Diamond Hogs covered. Baum Stadium season opening victory. They had to come back and they beat Grambling today 9-7 after being down. I think it was 6-1 maybe. Trailed in that game, and so they did that 3-1 already on the young season after a successful start away from home last weekend. And then when you look at the job that Otis Kirk does in football, and it's every day. There's something every day, and he's got content out there. And then we've already got a game story up at Hogvillenet YouTube Live. I'm going to go back and add Musk quotes, a few more details from the game to that. I just had a Nick Smith Jr. feature story that I put out in the wee hours of the morning today, just after midnight, somewhere like that. Maybe it was